Hello everyone and welcome to Clarity 16.1.3 Feature Supportability Training. I am Vib Mehrotra, and as part of this section we will be talking about the mobile app version 3.2.2. So as part of this release of the mobile app, we now support the ability to manage checklists that are visible to the user within the My Workspace to-dos, as well as manage the to-dos within that checklist. We've also addressed a timesheet bug that was reported by some of our customers. This was specifically when the customer was copying their tasks from the previous timesheet and was copying the task with the hours, then the bug was happening. And then finally, we have also enhanced this version of the app to now support older versions of Clarity. So customers should be able to connect their Clarity mobile app 3.2.2 with Clarity version 16.0.3 or higher. The reason this is important is because checklist is one of the most frequently used functionality within Clarity, and customers had asked the ability to be able to use the same functionality while on the go using the Clarity mobile app. This version of the mobile app now gives that capability to our customers. In addition, there were certain defects that customers had open and they wanted us to address, which we have done so as part of this mobile app release. So in the mobile app version 3.2.2, we now have the capability to manage checklists as well as the to-dos within those checklists. There's going to be a new menu item that is available for the users after logging into the mobile app. The users will have the ability to manage the checklists that are available within the workspace to do. So when the user goes into the Clarity UX, all the checklists that they can view in the My Workspace to do section, the same checklist will be available now in the Clarity mobile app. And then all the to-dos inside of those checklist will be available for the user to manage them within the mobile app also. The new to-do menu will be listed right underneath the action items, and navigating to there, the user will land onto the checklist page. The user can also set their default landing page to the new to-do by going into the settings. And then finally, we've also updated the menus page to not only show the mobile app version, but also show the Clarity version that the user is connecting to. This will help the user to understand which Clarity version they're using this app with, and then report any questions or concern to the administrators accordingly. Once navigating to the to-dos, the user will see the to-do, the checklist page. This would be defined in the same order as the user seeing their checklist in the modern UX. This page will include the investment specific as well as independently created checklist, and the sort order for the to-dos is the same as what it is in the UX, which is the user will see their opened and completed sort order first. Within the open and completed, they will see their own checklist in the order by the name. That's the same functionality as the UX. The checklist will display badges on top of it to provide some relevant information at a glance to the user so that they can act on their checklist accordingly. Similar to action item, we also support the pull to refresh functionality. So if there is any update, the user can just pull down to refresh their checklist page. And we also now support the swipe action in the checklist, where you can swipe to either delete a checklist or swipe to mark a checklist complete. So if swiping left, you can complete a checklist, and swiping right, you can delete a checklist. Let's look at the checklist page in terms of all the functionality that is available to the end user. Going just top to bottom, at the very top, the user will see the search area. The user can just type and it'll search for the checklist within that page itself based on the name that they are typing. The open and closed, there will be an option to expand and collapse so that they can easily collapse their open to get to their closed page, as well as within that open section, the users will have the ability to see all their open checklist in the form of a card. The name of the checklist will be displayed on the top. The owner avatar will be displayed along with the card information. The due date for the checklist will be displayed right next to it. And then there are specific badges that indicates useful information related to that checklist. The badges indicate the stop icon, which indicates that there is a blocked to-do within this checklist. There is an overdue icon that indicates how many to-dos within that checklist are beyond their due date. And then finally at the right, there is the counter badge, which will indicate how many to-dos have been completed in terms of the total number of to-dos. We also display the parent information. So for each checklist that is created, there is an icon for that specific parent where this checklist is created under and the name of that parent itself. If the user collapses the open section, they would then see the completed section, which they can expand or collapse. The user has the ability to create new checklist, and they can do so by clicking on the plus icon at the bottom half of the screen, which will then open up the flyout modal where they can type the name of the new checklist and they can populate the due date. The name of the checklist is required, so the create button will not be enabled till the name has been populated. The name length is the same as what is in the UX, which is 256 characters, and the user will get an inline error message indicating when they have gone beyond that 256 character. Once the user touches on a specific checklist, the checklist will open up displaying the checklist detail page. The detail page will have the following information: ability for the user to go back to the checklist page. The name of the checklist will be displayed right on top along with the parent information where the checklist is created under and the icon indicating if the type of investment or the parent it is. Right below that will be the due date for that specific checklist, and next to that will be the avatars of the owner and any collaborators for that checklist. The collaborators icon you will see up to 2, and then beyond that there will be just a number indicated. The number on or the badge number here will be the total collaborator number. So that means if there are 2 or 3 collaborators, if there are 3 collaborators, you'll see the counter 3. And if you want to add additional collaborators, then the user has the option to touch on this plus icon, which will then open up the ability for the user to share the specific checklist with additional users. Each to-do will be listed as a card by themselves underneath this the header section. Each to-do will have the option to either complete that to-do by using the radio button. Each to-do can be deleted by using the swipe option to swipe right, and the user can delete a specific to-do. The to-do due date will be displayed along with the name, and if the due date is over, meaning it's the due date was in the past, then the due date will be treated similar to the UX, which means it'll have a red background. The to-do owner's avatar will be displayed right next to the due date, and if there is any link populated for a specific to-do, then it'll have the link icon right next to the due date. In 16.1.3 of Clarity, we introduced the capability to populate notes within the to-do. That functionality is available also in the mobile, and if there is a note populated for a to-do, then this icon will be displayed here, indicating that this specific to-do has an icon, has a to-do note populated. If a specific to-do is blocked, then there will be this blocked icon right here indicating that to-do is blocked, and the user can review additional details for that to-do. There will be a floating icon similar to the other parts of the mobile app. Touching on it will give additional actions that they can perform in their checklist. Continuing on with that floating icon itself, touching on it will open up those additional options that are available to the user. The very first option is the new to-do that gives the capability to the user to create new to-dos within their checklist. The user has the capability to mark a checklist complete, which would be the next option listed here. If the user wants to change the name or the due date for their checklist, they can do so by going into the edit. If a user wants to make a copy of the checklist, then they can use the copy menu option. And then finally, if they want to delete the checklist within the checklist itself, they can just use the delete icon. If the user touches on the edit, they will get the ability to change the name, ability to change the due date, or just remove a due date. Similarly, if they touch on the copy checklist, they will get a similar flyout that will ask them to give the name for the new checklist, as well as the ability to change or remove the due date for the new checklist. When the user touches on the to-do, the new to-do option, a very similar flyout comes up, which will ask them the name for the new to-do and the ability to set a due date for that to-do. The name, similar to the checklist, the name of the to-do is required, and the create button will not enable till the name has been populated for that new to-do. The flow for sharing a checklist is as follows, that when the user is in the checklist detail page, they have this avatars of the users on top plus the plus icon. When the user touches on the plus icon, they will be navigated to the share checklist page. There they can see the detail of all the users where the current checklist has already been shared with, along with the owner. So the top, they will see the owner information, which would be the owner's name, as well as the email address. And they will see all the collaborators underneath them. The user can then touch on the plus icon at the bottom half of the share checklist, which will then open up a flyout listing the users that the current user can look at, and they can filter to search for a specific person that they would want to add as their collaborator. They can search by name or email address, and once the name appears, adding any one of those as a collaborator is as simple as just checking the box. So they can see the different options, they can check the box, or if they want to remove anybody, they can uncheck the box and then they can remove that specific collaborator. Once done so, they can touch on the close, and they will then land back on the shared checklist page with the updated list of their collaborators. Touching on a specific to-do will then take the user to the to-dos detail page. That's where they can get additional information for a specific to-do. And that information would be as follows, that at the very top, they will have the option to toggle if that specific to-do should be completed or not. So they can just toggle on and off the complete status. Right below that will be the name of the to-do, where they can touch on it to edit the to-do name. Below that is the owner of that to-dos, and we will display the avatar along with the full name of the owner. touching on that owner will allow the user to change the owner of that to-do. So just touching on it will display this flyout, and the same thing, they can search the new owner by either name or email address, or they have the option to just touch on the delete icon to remove an owner from a to-do. Below that will be the due date for that to-do, and the user can touch on the due date to change the due date, or use the delete icon to remove the due date set for that to-do. Below that is the ability to populate a link for the to-do, and the user can type in the URL that they would want to track within that to-do itself. Once done so, there is an icon right next to it which will allow the user to touch on to open that specific URL in their mobile defaulted browser. Below that, the user has the ability to toggle if a specific to-do is blocked or not. If the to-do is being the block is being toggled on for that to-do, then a to-do blocked comment field will automatically appear on the screen, and the user has the option to then populate to-do comments. Below that, the user has the option to populate the to-do notes. This is a new functionality introduced in Clarity 16.1.3. The user can just touch on this field to start populating or editing the to-do notes. And then finally, if they want to delete a specific to-do, they can do so by touching on the delete icon at the bottom right. Some of the access right changes that we have done as part of this mobile app version 3.2.2 is that starting mobile app 3.2.2, we will no longer use the mobile specific access rights to limit the user functionality or experience within the Clarity mobile app. Second, the user logging into the mobile app will see the following menu items but will not be able to do anything within those specific areas unless they have Clarity specific access right. So we are not bypassing any access rights. The user still needs all the appropriate Clarity access rights. However, those access rights, once granted in the Clarity UX, will allow the user now in the mobile app to use the same functionality. By removing this check for mobile specific access rights, we are able to make most of the mobile app functionality backward compatible all the way up to Clarity version 16.0.3 and higher. We now will be able to easily allow the Clarity administrators to roll out the Clarity app to their end users without having to manually grant different mobile specific access rights and causing confusion. So now any user that has the appropriate Clarity access right will be able to use that functionality in the mobile app itself. Certain things to be aware of regarding the backward compatibility. The mobile app 3.2.2 will support Clarity Server 16.0.3 and higher. However, there are certain functionalities that will not work in the older version of Clarity. That is because of the changes that were made in the Clarity code itself to support that functionality in the mobile app. These are as follows. The badges that is going to be available in the checklist page displaying the counter for any blocked to-dos, overdue to-dos, and the open and total to-do counters, all of those badges will not work when connecting to a Clarity version less than 16.1.3. User cannot view or manage to-do notes when connecting to Clarity version less than 16.1.3. Action items cannot be filtered using the action item status when they're connecting to a Clarity version less than 16.1.1. An action item history page will not show the initiated process name or parent type when connecting to Clarity version less than 16.1.1. Alright, with that, let's see Clarity mobile app in action. So here I am in the latest version of the Clarity mobile app 3.2.2. I've landed into the action item So let's first look at the menu itself. So when I navigate to the menu, I would see that there is a new option available to me, which is the to-dos. Also, you can see at the bottom here, I now have the Clarity version number that I'm connecting to, which is Clarity version 16.1.3. Navigating to the to-dos will take me to my checklist page, and the list of checklists that I'm seeing is exactly what I can see in the Clarity UX. Right here, when I'm in the Clarity UX, I can see that this is the list of my checklist. So this, again, I was able to reach here by logging into my Clarity 16.1.3 and navigate it to my workspace. And in here, I can see all the different checklists, which is in the order of the CDs, CI/CD pipeline readiness, communication readiness, cutover readiness, and so on. The same exact checklist is now available to me in the mobile app in the same sort order, which is I'm seeing all of my checklist first, checklist that I've created, uh, grouped in terms of the open and closed and or completed, and then I'm seeing the checklist where I've been added as a collaborator, and all of these sorted by the name after that. And that's the same order right here, which is CI/CD pipeline, communication readiness, and so on. In here, let's then look at some of the specific information that the user is able to see. The very first, going top to bottom, I have the ability to search for my checklist. So if I was looking for just the cutover activities, I would just type in the word and it'll filter down and show me any checklist where the value matches, and it'll search for that within the open as well as closed. In this case, it was only found under the open section. If I remove my filter, now I can see all the checklist again. Each checklist is displayed as a card within this page, and I can see the name of my checklist right here bolded. Below that, I can see the icon and the name of the parent where the specific checklist is created. In this example, I have quite a few custom investment type checklists, but if I scroll, I can see certain project checklist, and I can see other checklists that have been created in here. I have the moving below that, I can see the avatar of the owner. So in this case, it is me, that because these are all my checklist. But if there were other checklists where I was added as a collaborator, then I would see their avatars. Next to that, I see the due date for this specific checklist, and then I see certain badges that gives me certain information at a glance. So I know that for my CI/CD pipeline, there are two to-dos that are blocked, and there are two to-dos that are overdue. And I have 4 to-dos completed out of 13. Similarly, if I look at the one below that, I can quickly see that there are 4 to-dos that are overdue, and none are completed out of 5. And in this one, the same thing. I have 1 that is blocked, 7 overdue, and 4 completed out of 11. If there is any updated information that I wanted to look at, I can easily just scroll down, and it does the pull to refresh, and there is no update. The next is I have the option to swipe to delete any one of these. So let's say when I look at over here, there's certain checklist that is created. There's nothing, no to-dos created inside of it, must be created by accident. So I can easily delete this by doing a swipe. I can do a swipe right and the delete appears. I can just delete that and the checklist will go away from my list. The other thing to indicate once all the to-dos have been completed, then I would easily see the icon as green. Similarly, if I feel that certain checklist has been completed, then I can just do a swipe action. So let's just say this one is completed. I can do a swipe action and I can mark it complete, and it just disappears from my list. Let's go inside one of the checklists, which is my CI/CD pipeline. By touching on it, I can open my checklist itself. So let's again open the checklist itself. Opening that checklist gives me the list of all the to-dos, and as we talked about at the very top, I can see the checklist name. I can see the parent icon as well as the name of the parent. I can see the due date for my checklist itself. Below that are the cards for all my to-dos themselves. I can see that these are all the different to-dos with the option to mark any of those to-dos complete at any point using the radio button right here. The due date for the to-do is listed at the right side along with the avatar of the owner for that specific to-do itself. I can see right here at the bottom that there is the icon that displays the to-do note. That means this specific to-do has a note populated for it. And I can see the to-do below that has a link populated for it because I can see the link icon, as well as this specific one is blocked and it is overdue. So it's again quick information at a glance available to me that I can immediately look at and then react and act upon as needed. In the floating icon, if I touch on, I have the option to create new to-dos. I have the option to mark my checklist as complete. I can edit my checklist. I can make a copy of it, or I can delete my checklist itself. If I go on top, I can see that this specific checklist has been shared with multiple collaborators. I can touch on this plus icon, which will then open up the shared checklist, and I can see the name of the owner for this specific checklist, in which case it's me. And then I can see all the different collaborators, their avatars, their email address, and if I want to add anybody else, I can touch on this plus icon at the bottom right, where I can get the list of all the different users that are being defined in the system that I have access to see. I can search by name, or I can search by email address. So let's say if I want to search for Amy, I can do so by just typing and it immediately comes up. I have the option to just check on it, and she is now added to my checklist as a collaborator. And I can then close this specific one. I can go back out to look at my to-do itself. I have the option to swipe my specific to-do, and I can then delete that to-do if I want to. If I close that, I can touch on a specific to-do, which opens it up to give me additional details related to my to-do itself. As discussed in the deck, I have the ability to toggle the mark complete. So I can mark the specific to-do as complete. I can see the name of my to-do right below it. I can see the to-do owner, which I have the option to add or remove. I can change the to-do owner by just touching on the name of the to-do, and again the same list pops up. I can search by a specific name and I can change it. Right below that is the due date, which I can either edit or I can remove. So if I go ahead and touch on it, it gives me the option to populate the date. I can just easily change that due date. And then below that is where I can populate a link for my to-do. And I can then either mark my to-do as blocked or not. If I mark it as blocked, or toggle it as blocked, you would see that the block comment reason field automatically pops up, and I can type in my information. And then right below that is the notes capability that I can populate to my to-do, which I can just touch on it and it gives me the place to populate my to-do notes. Okay, I can go back out of that, and let's open up the other one where a link is already populated. So I can touch on that, and you can see this specific to-do. It is not complete. I can see the name. It is overdue because the background is red. There is a link that is populated. If that link, I want to check where that it takes me, I can touch on the specific icon and it'll open up that link in the default browser in my mobile app. I can easily come back to my mobile app where I can again see the rest of the information. I can see the blocked comments and the other information related to my to-do itself. And finally, at the bottom, I have this capability to delete my to-do from inside. All right, let's go ahead and create a brand new checklist, and let's populate some to-do information for it. So let's say if I wanted to create a checklist where I can track my audit information, I can do so by just going into my checklist page. I can use the plus icon. Doing that gives me the area where I can populate the checklist name and populate a due date. Notice that the create button is disabled, and that is disabled till I populate the name. So I'm going to populate this as a checklist that I want to track my audit report information. If I want to populate the due date, let's say that this one is due by end of next month on the 30th. So now I've populated the due date, and that's the date. I can now go ahead and touch on create. That will create my checklist, and it'll automatically open that page where I can see that at this point there is no to-dos because obviously it is brand new. I can see the due date and I can see my avatar because I am the owner. Next, let's populate a couple of new to-dos in here. I can do that by using the floating icon. I can just touch on it and say new to-do, and let's just populate some information, which is generate the report. I can just touch on, and I just created it. Let's create one more, and this one, let's call it that I want to share this with the auditors. If I want to set a due date, which this one, let's just say I don't want to wait till the very last minute. Maybe I'll give it a 10-day buffer. So I'll set it to September 20th as the due date for this specific one. And there the second to-do is created. If I wanted to set the due date for this one, I can just touch on it and I can go inside. You can see that there is no owner specified. I can create the owner for generating this as Amy. And if I want to set the due date, I can populate the URL as well as populate some note. All right, and then I can go back out. This has the owner and now the notes icon populated. All right. Maybe I want to create this checklist for my current year activity. So I want to change the name for this checklist, and I can do so by going into the edit, and the screen pops up. I can populate my year to it, that this is for the current year only, and I can save that. Right, and then I can go back out, and I can see that is created. I can go back in again, and this time let's go ahead and make a copy, because this is going to be for next year. So I can just change that to 2024, make a copy, and it'll create the new one and open it up automatically for me. So it's some of the actions that a user would normally do, which is if I'm going into edit or when I'm creating a brand new one, we automatically open up the newly created checklist. Similarly, when I'm copying one, it'll automatically open the new one after the copies. And that concludes this section. Thank you, everyone.